Just about once a year. Oh, we're live. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to City of Sunbury Park and Rec Committee meeting for February 1st, 2023. It's about 5:32 p.m. How about a call to order, Mr. Hennessy?
Mr. Ghost.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to City of Sunbury Park and Rec. That's a meeting for February 1st, 2023. It's about 5:32 p.m. LLP on a call to order, Mr. Hennessy. Mr. Ghost.
There you go. It was looping in, it was playing the stream.
Let's try that again. All right, ready? Mr. Ghost,
Yes, here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Grumney.
Here.
3 in attendance. We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our last meeting was on January the 4th, 2023. Do we have a motion for approval of those minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. Grumney. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes,
3 ayes.
thank you. All right, visitor section. I do see a couple folks here. Would either of you like to speak?
Question once you guys get started.
We're ready to go. So if you want to talk, you have to come up to the podium there and you got to speak into the microphone. We're recording it.
Give your name. and
Make it
address.
official. Yes, name and address.
My name is Joe Strong, I live at 178 Cherry Street. And I came here today solely to figure out where the
Oh, Jared.
Smith park remodel or revitalization, where that's at.
Great question. That is actually our next order of business. So we'll try to answer all your questions here coming up next, and we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions too, okay? Is that all you wanted to know for this evening? Okay. All right, let's go to unfinished business. J.R. Smith discussion, strategic planning discussion. So earlier this week, I had a meeting with Wes and Mr. Hennessy and Steve, and I think Dan White was there, and I believe it was Richard, your landscape architect. Is that right, Wes?
Correct.
And we did a Zoom call and just wanted to take a step back, pump the brakes a little bit and what we were thinking at J.R. Smith and see if maybe there's a better alternative in terms of can we pair J.R. Smith up with the square enhancement at the same time, as opposed to thinking about Freedom Park, which is out there and off the beaten path. So I had asked Wes and his team ahead of time last week to look into that, taking the step back process. And he came up with a really good idea. And I think if you don't mind, Wes, I'll kick it over to you to help explain your analysis.
Yeah, give me just 2 more minutes here. I just want to get a diagram to Daryl so he can pull it up on the screen. But if you can zoom in on J.R. Smith, the town square and the old church parking lot, we can kind of go through it here. Well, I'll start with an overview. So Tim kind of prompted a discussion, which I thought was appropriate to just kind of step back a minute, look at all of our park ideas that we've had at J.R. Smith, Freedom. And just say, do we have the right amenities at the right location? you know, as far as timing with the locations, you know, this being kind of a pocket park within the older portion of Sunbury. Freedom being a park set up north, you know, without really attached with pedestrian connection, sanitary sewer service and so on. So specifically on J.R. Smith, you know, we just kind of went through our amenities again, and basically we're looking at, you know, is the splash pad the right timing on that? Is
Sidebar, sorry about
is it, yeah, is the facilities proposed good right now as far as moving forward? So right now, I think what's, you know, the best group of amenities there to start with is the new parking lot that we have laid out. And I don't know if Daryl, if you have an exhibit of that last,
Yeah, if you could,
which one? The last?
go around for
Yeah.
J.R. Smith,
J.R.
just so we
Smith,
could
yeah.
pull that up.
there you go.
The concept plan.
So for our visitors here, Jared, and you must be Jessica, right? Okay, good to see you. This is our, up until this point, this is our rough conceptual plan for what we were thinking about doing down there. And you can see the parking lot there, splash pad to the left, and just north of there would be a playground area. That way, yeah, and then the pavilion to the left there next to the splash pad. And a perimeter trail going around with an eventual connection to the Ohio Erie Trail to the south of that location when it comes across. And connections to the square, actually crosswalks there, along with maybe some fitness stations. So that was kind of the idea, and that's kind of the concept that we put together, but we were trying to figure out how to get to a certain amount of dollar money so we could put together a bond package to put on up for the voters that would not only include this park, but maybe another park. So, you know, you want to get to the $3 or $4 million mark is a good sweet spot for pursuing that. So anyhow, we originally thought about pairing up Freedom Park, but the more I think Wes's team thought about it, he brought it to our attention on Monday. He thought that possibly a better idea would be to incorporate the enhancement of the square at the same time.
Yeah, do you want anything else on this, Wes, or you want to get back to?
Yeah, let me, if you could go under the service folder, I just put the updated J.R. Smith Park plan there, which I can go over, and then I'll tie in the town square here. I was just getting a couple documents uploaded there, so.
Yeah.
Wait till Daryl pulls that up. It's just an updated version of the J.R. Smith Park to show the current amenities. I created a folder called Parks. There it is. Yeah, right there. So,
This one?
yes, correct. So this is the current conceptual plan for J.R. Smith. If you just zoom in slightly. Great.
That's fair. That's good. That's good.
You know, we want to.
There you go.
Perfect.
That's good. Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go.
So where we landed, you know, we started out with a lot of good amenities to add. It's not a huge area as far as parks go, so we didn't want to overpopulate it with amenities. And we thought what would be useful for the residents that live around this park and that would use it on a frequent basis. So what you see here on the far right side would be where those two current basketball courts are. We positioned a new half court there. That's
Yeah.
about what would fit in that area. Reposition the driveway and the parking lot slightly. So it'd be a nice half court basketball court there too. New parking lot, there on the left-hand side, you do see the splash pad, the pavilion, the playground. And those are the key amenities. Another one that we've talked about is to add probably at certain locations around that. So on that south side, kind of along the south line, you see the 8-foot wide trail. We would position fitness stations along there or potentially up in that green space just south of the splash pad. But the fitness stations could be anything from, like you've seen at some parks where they take basically wood and galvanized pipe and make pull-up bars and different type of things. There's also, you can upgrade that to outdoor hydraulic machines and other things that you can do with a little bit more sophisticated park equipment. So this was our last go around, just talking with the Parks Committee, Tim and so on. And
mention the bike rack and repair station, why we put it there, if you would, Wes.
right. So that right there where Daryl's pointing is a bike rack and repair station, just knowing that this could be a resting zone for the folks traveling the Ohio to Erie Trail, which is further south of this property.
Yeah, that's sure signs there, I think.
But it's a location that you could go, and you've seen those bike repair stations. They have the common tools typically there to do repairs to a bike, flat tires, etc. So kind of keep it simplified at this point and not put in amenities like we had originally, like a community garden and pickleball courts and different things. Just trying to say that maybe those amenities would be better suited for another park location. A little bit of the discussion on the splash pad that we've had at this point. So, we've done splash pads for many clients, not only in Ohio, but surrounding states. And a lot of them end up by a community pool, typically where there's just some more oversight, some more facilities. A lot of these bigger splash pads actually have the filter system on them. So very similar to a pool where they have a filter system. It's chlorinated water, it's recycled. So it's essentially a pool in that sense. And it's the health department permits it and controls it as a pool when it's a recycle system like that. So that would be one that we would potentially think about, maybe pausing on the splash pad, building the pavilion and maybe even expand the pavilion and have the playground, the pavilion, the parking lot, basketball workout stations, and then just see how things work out. I know up at Freedom Park, as part of the park's master plan, we have a community center planned, which had the intentions of a pool with it. And we've kind of collectively thought that maybe that's not the best location for a community center. And knowing that that's floating around and we could potentially attach the splash pad to a better location. Your typical age range too, we talked about on a splash pad is typically a younger group. So maybe it's a better location. And so there's a lot of thoughts going into, is a splash pad the right fit at this park? And, so if we did a phase one, maybe that would include everything except the splash pad and just give the Parks Committee a little bit more time to think about that. And then, look at the other parks and the amenities required and try to get the right amenity in the right location was kind of our theme.
With regard to the more popular idea of pairing up the splash pad with a community center, for example, Reynoldsburg,
Right.
Delaware, right? And their YMCA with their splash
Yeah,
pad.
there's one in the park behind the YMCA over. in
Yeah,
Delaware.
so I mean, that's kind of the trend that makes the most sense, I think. And centrally locating it maybe that in that direction where all the walkability would
Yeah,
be.
the one in Delaware has swing sets and some other amenities attached to it also. Would that be a possibility here?
To the actual splash pad.
right
near the,
very close to the
Oh, very
splash
close.
pad. The splash pad's there, there's a shelter house there.
Yeah.
right,
There's actually a building that has a snack bar that people can rent it out and sell snacks out of it for
Hmm.
certain events and stuff
Oh.
like that. But they have swings, a little glider kind of swing that little kids can ride on
Sure.
and stuff.
so we have shown just north of the splash pad, that playground area, and the specific amenities within that playground area can be those types of
Yeah.
things, or, you know, Rich Washington from our office has talked about, there's all kind of cool things that you can do at a playground for different age ranges and
Yeah.
climbing features, and they're accessible to all
Yeah.
different types of kids. So that's kind of a to be determined on the specific things in the playground, but have a pretty good size area blocked out for playground area. And that could expand, you know, if we needed to include a little bit of
Yeah.
more of a swing set or something else. So good, a lot of good thoughts, a lot of, back to the drawing board, just trying to, you know, again, think about the right amenities at this location, and that's where things stand right now with J.R. Smith.
Yeah, and then that sort of led to another discussion, and Wes brought up the fact of, why don't we think about pursuing the Village Square enhancement along with the J.R. Smith enhancement, since they're both centrally located and in need of improvement, and work on also a connecting feature, you know, in between the alleyway that we have some history with there by the Money Concepts, and then getting it connected to J.R. Smith Park, and so they're complementing each other and they're enhanced at the same time.
So I'll talk about that a little bit. So I was just thinking about all the kind of the needs list in this area. And I'm just gonna rattle off a few here, and more I'm gonna stay on the 37 Granville Street corridor right now. So one need that we know on the north side of Town Square would be to kind of finish our streetscape in that area.
Yeah.
And then as you move towards the corner by the small park where we have the right angle bend. That's, yeah,
Oh, yes.
over by the small park by J.R. Smith Park. Where State Route
Sorry.
37
Liberty,
bends.
Liberty. I think that's
Going the
Liberty.
wrong way.
You know, we do have that small park space there, and that
Parking lot behind it there.
in the old church lot, you know, but just on that corridor first. So we have a turning radius issue there with tractor trailers and semi trucks. And then there's definitely as you move towards Granville Street, there's that corridor from right there at Certified up to that needs some pedestrian, you know, improvements to make that a little bit more friendly. Then as you move up the hill, you know we have a constraint there at the hill with the railroad abutments, and Preservation Parks is right now we're working with them along with Sunbury, trying to figure out the bridge that'll cross over 37 to connect the Ohio to Erie Trail. And then as we move up what I'll call the 37 Hill, as we've always called it, to Arbor, definitely a restriction there on width. And then the pedestrian connection with the folks up on the Arbor area development, that area and J.R. Smith, or even the walkability to Town Square is limited. Another little piece up there is Crowell Drive is, you know, it's not a public street, that right away ends, and there's a need out there to figure that out. You have several residents on there that are, you know, that are on a private street that it's not funded there. They would have to actually, if there's an improvement made, you know, we can't spend the public dollars. We do have a sanitary sewer that runs through there. So, and the reason I mention that is, you know, just thinking about pedestrian connection to J.R. Smith, Town Square from all aspects, all 360 around the park and the square. figuring out ways, the 37 Hill's a heavy lift on widening, and that could be a project with the Intel dollars flowing that we could advocate for, which we have multiple studies on that. But Crowell Drive in particular was interesting because the Ohio to Erie Trail is going to connect on very close to the north side of that.
Mhm.
And as we move through there might be a connection to, secure roadway easement, maybe conduct a pedestrian connection over to the trail, which would get you on the upper portion. Then as we think about the Ohio to Erie Trail Bridge that crosses 37, one component that we may work in is that connection down to Granville Street. So it may be a ramp, it may be a set of stairs. It'll probably be more accessible if we could do it with some type of connection so that you could, instead of walking down the sidewalk along 37, you could get to it through Crowell Drive through a connection to the Ohio to Erie Trail. So that's just some placeholders around this area where I think if it would be improvements to when you do put money into J.R. Smith or you do additional improvements on Town Square, it just creates better connections for people to walk over to it. So then going from J.R. Smith westerly towards the square, we have the old church parking lot right there. And so that's a publicly owned parking lot with access both north and south, Granville and Cherry. Yeah, we've looked at that, and as you move west of there, then you go into the private parking lots by the auto body and behind all the residences, the businesses along Vernon. And there's been a sketch or two in the past to see how we could help improve that parking lot and drainage. Maybe do some type of public-private deal to where the old church lot, that parking is improved behind that in front of the auto body, expanded a little bit. And like a lot of communities do, Delaware, Worthington, and so on, as they team with the businesses. So in the evening and the weekends, those parking spots are available. And then during business hours, they're used for their customers. We also thought about in the past, and we just stoked this up the other day when we were talking with Tim and Daryl, about a pedestrian walkway connection on that alley by the firehouse. Just trying to get a better connection. There's some fencing and some private property, but rather than going down to Granville or Cherry, to the sidewalk from the old church lot is certainly a potential, but you could do that. And that would aid all of that parking and the pedestrian improvement behind the Vernon Street buildings, would improve parking on the square and help that. So we just were trying to connect J.R. Smith, the parking, the walkability.
That's the big thing. Yeah, getting the J.R. Smith parking lot, make it accessible to the folks who want to go to something on the square. They could walk through there ultimately on the future walkway if we can make it happen.
Yes, and then we have to get some kind of safety crossing there, because there's no signal from the bend down as you approach the 37 Hill and the certified area at that intersection. It's kind of a difficult because certified has that entire lot paved. So on the east side of Granville, it's not, there's no defined sidewalk there. We'd have to
Do we have to
look at
work, do we have to work with ODOT to put a crosswalk across a state highway?
Well, within the city, you have jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we could do that now that
It
we're
was
city
different when we were
status.
a village and we didn't have quite so much jurisdiction.
Right, and
Okay,
if it's a signal on the state route, I think we still gotta check with them. But,
right.
so then moving on to Town Square, trying to see what else we could do with Town Square. And we had prepared, it's been a few years now, and I have a PDF of that. If you want me to put that in the folder, I could.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a version of it. It's a little
Fuzzy.
fuzzy, but
Yeah, it's- Let me do
If you
that
wanna
real
clean-
quick.
yeah, you got a better version.
1 sec.
Yeah, that's not your eyesight there, Dave.
While you're looking there, for the record and for our guests, you know, these are all just conceptual plans, and whatever we sort of agree to here on what we want to present, it will be presented to the public in a town hall. And we would invite anyone to come in and get their feedback. And based on their feedback, you know, if there's an overwhelming reason or overwhelming support for a different amenity or somewhere else in one of those areas that we haven't thought about, you know, that's subject to change. And so, you know, we want to have the support of the community and get their feedback as part of the whole process and what they want, what they think is appropriate. And so,
Do you want mine?
sure,
Do I
yeah,
have to go to the podium again?
yeah, go ahead. It's on the record.
Can you go back to the proposal? So this looks great, you know, but I heard about this last summer. So my question is, what's stopping you guys from hitting the go button? Yeah, right, from what I heard from Wes, he's saying that there's some questions about whether or not doing things to the main town square along the connections over there. You know, is something you want to include in like one budget, is that correct?
Not necessarily one budget, just kind of taking a focused view of this area as far as the park and the pedestrian connections in Town Square, because we're kind of considering J.R. Smith with Town Square and the old church lot to be very connected. So we're looking at ways to make those connections better. Overflow parking, people that are using Town Square for an event can easily get to J.R. Smith and back and forth. So we were thinking along those terms.
And I'm sorry, the reason that, you know, you delay it, and I wouldn't use the word delay, but the reason why we're taking our time is because we want to make sure that the price point that we're going to seek, that $3 or $4 million amount, presumably through a bond package, we want to make sure that it has the best chance to pass, that it includes community support. So we'll have, you know, the vast majority of voters will approve it. And so that it fits within potentially seeking grants, because we definitely want to look at doing that. And so if you incorporate the trail and the square and the Route 37, Granville Street, in with that, there's better opportunities for grants to help us pay for it. So, you know, we got to keep that.
Makes sense. My concern is that you try to do all of it, you're never gonna do any of it. If you have all of these things that you have to bite off in one big giant bite, you're not gonna be able to manage it well to where everyone's happy. You rip up the town square, you rip up these routes leading over there. You're working on an Erie Trail, you know, you're working on the park. As far as like grants for the Erie, Ohio Trail, like, wouldn't it be easier to get that if you have a place that somebody wants to go to that's connected to the trail?
Yeah, I mean, timing and how everything fits in is important. I think maybe Wes can speak more to that. He's had more experience with the grant process than I have, but.
Yeah, the trail piece is funded right now, so Preservation Parks of Delaware County is funding that trail project. We're teaming up with them just specifically on the bridge piece that goes over State Route 37s, but
The old railroad bridge.
correct, where those two abutments are right there. So I was just kind of painting a little bit of a master planning picture. It doesn't mean that we're going to combine all these projects into one project, but as we kind of put a lens on and focus in on this area, you know, just so we have a master plan or a roadmap, if you will, of things that need to happen in order to improve the pedestrian routes and the connections, knowing that, okay, we understand the big picture and what needs to happen. So as we make an improvement in one area, we know what has to happen in the other areas so we can
You know what the next
facilitate
step
that.
is.
Really, that's what's being determined right now. So we're just, we have been focused on J.R. Smith Park, but we collectively thought it would be better to kind of look at the broader area. I think once the city's ready to move forward, J.R. Smith is up there on the list. It's to be determined on exact timing.
Yeah, and again, these are just, like we said earlier, we're not doing any of this without your feedback, and that's gonna come in the form of social media. We'll put the plan out there, what's being proposed, subject to change, subject to your feedback. Town hall, open town hall where you can come in and express your opinions, the same thing you just mentioned. Maybe what you just said is ultimately what we end up doing. Who knows? Depends on where we're at in the process, when that happens in terms of budgeting and grant availability and what the people want.
So what's your go, no go? Like you're at no go right now. What's your, all right, let's go ahead and do it. Like, what does that threshold look like?
Hard to say. I don't know. What do you think, John?
No, great questions, by the way. I mean, I just think that there's, this is the planning phase. I think the concern is just, and I get your point about, can we just get something started, which makes a lot of sense. But I think you got to get a vision of where we want to end up before you just start doing piecemealing.
No, Wes was talking about is great. All that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Right.
I guess my question, Wes, I don't know if you're the right one to ask this, but obviously everything comes with a cost, and whatever you add to this it increases whether or not how we finance or what we go for. Is there at some point in this process going to be a breakdown to say, okay, the bronze option, I'm just using this example, would include this, and this, and here's what it would cost. May or may not need a bond, may come through grant money, and then the silver option is this, and this, and then the gold option includes everything we just talked about. Because for me, having kind of those cost models are helpful, because then you can kind of do a benefit analysis and go, yeah, that makes sense. Or do we really want to go and ask the citizens for this much money for this park? Or do we want to, it's something we can grow, kind of like to your point, can we put something in and then grow with it as it seems appropriate?
Mhm.
I think everything that I mentioned, along the right of way corridors of the public streets, that certainly can get outside funding easily, especially with the Intel money potentially, because this is on the state route that is an impact zone for
Right.
Intel.
Mhm.
And that could also be OPWC type funds. So I would segregate the public street right-of-way improvements that I was mentioning, separate from your J.R. Smith Park, your Old Church parking lot in the town square, that being more still funding available, Clean Ohio and so on, or you can just roll those three parks into a bond and go. But would separate that into several projects over time, different funding sources. We could certainly maybe do a projection of, low to high, if you just took all the costs and added them up and said, all right, well, if we had, what's a typical funding percentage for this type of project, and took a best guess on getting all the funding, if we were to have, versus not getting, or getting half the funding, you could get a range of local cash that you would need with a, range of funding if you were successful, somewhat successful, or fully successful on the funding. So that could easily be done. We just started kicking around more than J.R. Smith on Tuesday.
Yes. Yes.
We talked,
Yeah.
so.
I was just gonna maybe add to that. I mean, one of the things we've done a little bit of, and I think maybe you're suggesting we need to do more of, and that is, I mean, Wes and his team have costed out what some of these amenities would be.
Mhm.
And I think every time we kind of get to that point, we sort of think, but is this what we need?
Mhm.
So that was the sort of the step back, was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's stop costing out model A, B, C, and D. And let's just kind of figure out what it is that the plan looks like,
Right.
and then he can cost out the components of it.
Right.
And I think then we could probably, develop an A, B, and C option, or whatever the case
Yeah.
might be. We have done a little bit of analysis on the the financial implications for homeowners. If you pick a $3 million bond versus a
Right.
$4 million bond versus, at this rate versus that rate. But again, we're just kind of all over the place, or we're all over the place, I guess, at this particular
Yeah.
point, because we haven't really settled on, what does the plan look like? I mean,
Right.
what do we want the elements to be? And then we could say, and these are the 3 we want to do first, and these are the 5 that,
Right. And
maybe are along.
thanks, Gerald. To the gentleman's point, I think that, I'm not extremely familiar with bonds other than I vote on them. But I can't imagine that's a quick process, going to, I think, your point as far as delaying stuff. And I think we just have to be careful when we think about bonds. I mean, strictly about timing, just based on,
What
current
other
conditions.
What other issues are on the ballot? at the
Right, to
same
follow with
time?
that, and if it's popular, is it not popular?
It's a
And
big,
yeah,
biggie.
so, again, that's obviously why Tim has said citizen support and input is so important, because if you're looking to spend that kind of money, you want to make sure you have that, because again, things are tight right now. And for people to think about losing more out of their paycheck, maybe it's definitely a good investment to the community, and that they all for it, or maybe people a little shy at this moment. So timing is all.
I have 2 questions, probably one for you. How long from start to finish does the construction take?
For a project like that, it's probably a 3, 4, 5 month project, that to pull the trigger on that. So there would be, a design period, permits, bidding period, and then construction. So
even if
total,
you
you'd
were
be a
to-
full year with the construction season available.
So if you were to hit go now, it wouldn't be until next summer that anyone could actually appreciate it. Correct?
That would probably be
Right,
very
we'd have
earliest.
to
I
get
would
through a
think.
design period and,
Thereabouts.
right,
Okay.
Realistically, we're probably 2 to 3 years away from completing J.R. Smith Park, I would
yeah.
think.
Right, and that's if you have the financing in place,
Yeah.
and that we don't have in place, so.
So that's what you're waiting for right now is they finalize the plan and then secure financing for it, correct?
Yeah, look at the
Propose.
financing plan, what percentage of our current budget can we use? What can we go into a bond issue ultimately? What about impact fees, and grants? Grant timing is everything, there's grant applications in the spring, summer, and fall. They happen all during different times of the year, depending on what you're pursuing. So you gotta figure out what you're gonna pursue and what's the timing on that. But then once they award the grant, you do have a time limit as to when you have to break ground and finish the project. So,
So maybe if I could so part of the message you're sending to us is you like the idea of an investment in J.R. Smith Park, you like the direction that it's headed. What do you like about the do you like the focus on kind of a splash pad, a younger, family oriented themed location? You like the athletic aspects of the potential park amenities? I mean, is there something specific that you hear that
This
you
is
like?
an attractive space to be, and I have to look at it every single day as it is, and it's grassy and muddy and okay.
unattractive. You can be honest.
I mean, the path is kind of beaten up and
So you'd like some investment and clearly in the park.
yeah, it'd be
For sure.
nice. It'd be
Yeah.
really, really nice. It would look great, you can send your kids over there when you're tired of them, just like, hey, get over there. When you've got events going on at the town square, you're making this circle around the square and then you're done. If you've got events going on, somewhere to go to actually do stuff, you can extend your stay a little bit, actually have something to do. So it looks great, I'd like to see it happen. My main question was, how do we?
Get to
Get
the
the
next.
ball moving.
I think our next step would be with Mr. Groney and Mr. Martin, and maybe please give it some serious thought between now and our next meeting with regard to whether or not we want to move down this path about what Wes just discussed and pairing up the village square and getting the path in and working on 37. If that's where we want to go, let's come to our next meeting to confirm that, and then we can direct Wes to drill down that idea further with costs and some more detailed plans. Does that sound like a good plan of action? Steve, Daryl? Anything further you want to add?
No, I appreciate your last comment there about an event down on the square and you circle the square and then maybe if there was some other place to go and continue the stay. I
Yeah.
think that's exactly the concept of trying to connect to the square and J.R. Smith
Mhm.
Park is that it would,
Yeah. Like, great.
Yeah.
so that's helpful feedback. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, Jared and Jessica. Come to the next one too, be the first Wednesday in March.
Alright,
Okay,
so the Parks and Rec section done. Of the meeting.
no, we still got 3 more items. That's okay. That's what we got to move forward here, but
That's what we.
Oh, we might be done with chairs.
is that all you had? Okay.
Yeah, that's my sole purpose of being here.
And you can call me anytime. I mean, you have my number.
Thanks for coming out.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next item on the list here, Fallen Heroes Trail, Phase 3. Wes has some information for us and potentially including Phase 4 as well.
And we can get back to the landscape plan on Town Square. We did go over that, but let's go over the Fallen Heroes Trail real quick. I put a PDF in that same folder
For the trail.
for the Town Square
Oh,
You'll see it here too,
landscape plan.
your packet.
we put it in service.
I did, yeah.
Service.
Well, Daryl's pulling that up. So on Fallen Heroes Trail Phase 3 update, contracts are executed with Facemeyer Company. So there was a walkthrough meeting last
It's this
Friday.
red section.
So pre-construction activities are moving. So they're gonna walk that and we want the clearing done here soon. So he's just trying to determine ground conditions to do the clearing for that Phase 3 trail stretch. We do have Phase 4 funded, partially funded. So we have some money from the county for Phase 4,
Mhm.
which goes from the end of Phase 3 across that detention basin, north of that detention basin, over to Sunbury Meadows, if you remember that layout. So we just need to move Phase 4 forward before the end of the year. That funding will expire at the end of the year. So we want to either handle that in either 2 ways. One, potentially execute a change order with Mr. Facemeyer to include that as part of the Phase 3 project if he would honor the unit pricing from the Phase 3 contract.
That's the most cost-effective option, right?
We think so. I mean, you could always bid Phase 4 out as a public bid, but it's a fairly small trail section and just trying to get, a contractor in to do that when he's going to be down there working already. If you recall, we kind of paused on Phase 4 because of the Granville Street apartments. Sunbury Commerce Park just wanted to make sure we had everything in line there.
Right.
So just wanted to float that out that we're gonna move down that path and collect some more information from the county as far as the grant restrictions on the bidding, if we can execute that as a change order. And then get back to the administration on that. So stay tuned. That's just a quick update on Fallen Heroes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Wes. Any questions for Wes on that? Okay, Sunbury Memorial Park, we talked about this in our last meeting.
This or you're saying?
Sure, whenever you're ready
Or
to.
do you want to move on?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So just the last piece of the discussion we were having initially with J.R. Smith Old Church in Town Square. This was a concept plan that we had done, it's been more than a few years now, but it's just some enhancements on Town Square. Town Square is beautiful as it stands now, but we just looked at a few things that we could do. And probably the 2 biggest improvements on this particular plan are your corner entrance points.
Mhm.
And those would be just, basically expanding the brick pavers, maybe making, small patio area with bench seating.
Mhm.
And then an arbor type structure where it'd have kind of an entrance type structure, and there's an exhibit there on the right. So that was just an enhancement of the four corners, probably some enhanced landscaping within if there's any trees that you would want to, replace or remove.
So there is something that can be done with the northeast corner.
Okay.
Because right now it narrows down to a sidewalk that's only this wide right up next to the curb.
Right.
And we were told at one point that had to do with something with the drainage system on the square. And that's why that was laid out the way it was when it happened originally. Do you know anything about that?
That original project was just being wrapped up when I was getting started
Okay.
in 2007. I do recall something about that. I know there was one of the original cisterns in that corner,
Right.
and there was something
And
going
that's the
on.
way it was set up, the way it was. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was actually a buried cistern for fire protection back in the day around the
Yeah.
square. So, the other,
Well, this used to be the firehouse.
right. Yeah.
The front door, they used to back a wagon in right there and pull it out with the horses
Mhm.
years and years and years ago. And that's.
You
where they
remember
got the
that?
Water.
You remember that, don't you?
That's where they got the water to fill the tanker for the firefighting.
That was firehouse, post office, jail, right? It was kind of a little bit.
Library.
Back in your early volunteering days, no doubt. Sorry to interrupt.
I was gonna point out, one of the other kind of major improvements was on the north side and the south side. You see brick plazas there.
Mhm.
The position, the larger one on the north side because of the fire escape on the south side.
Mhm.
But that could be, I'll call it a mini amphitheater.
Yeah, we could have a couple of steps, a couple of step up, right? With the
Yeah, you could
small
set up
staging
music,
area.
we could get Dave out there with a guitar, it'd be a good spot for him.
Mhm.
But that's just an enhancement to make the square more attractive for, the movie nights or the small band or
Yeah.
just a speech, an announcement, a gathering to make the outdoor space there, which is well used with all the businesses around it to just be a little bit more attractive around the building. So we're talking about this on Tuesday on a call just to, as we talked about J.R. Smith and the connection to Old Church parking lot and the small park there on the corner by the Statue of Liberty, and then this town square and how to kind of connect and think about all those as one. So that was the final piece of that discussion.
Yeah, well said. So yeah, that's what kind of where we were headed, Dave and John, with regard to moving forward is maybe we're looking in that direction and pairing up the two parks, the two areas and getting a walkway and looking at presenting that to the public. So give that some serious thought for our next meeting. Thank you. Anything further you want to mention on that, Wes?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, we got a few minutes left. So Daryl, why don't you go ahead with the cemetery discussion and the pricing?
Yeah, so I'll be quick on this. We had talked a little bit about the current state of the cemetery and the number of plots that were available. At that meeting, you asked if we could do just a little bit more research on what's happening with pricing in nearby cemeteries. So if you look in your packet, back on page 5, you'll see that we did pull 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other cemeteries in addition to Sunbury. So I'll let you look through the pricing. What maybe has jumped out at me is the plot pricing, jurisdiction. That meant if you're in the jurisdiction that has the cemetery, you can see the first 4 are all at $200. So we're clearly in line with that.
Mhm.
If you're in the county in those same 4, again, it's the same pricing, $600. And if you're outside of the county, $1,200. So those are pretty much aligned. Johnstown and New Albany are kind of outliers on that, and that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just trying to look at that a little bit. The middle section there, a niche. I only found pricing, or we only found pricing for us, so not sure if they have a niche or if they have those kinds of facilities. They may have it and it just wasn't on the pricing sheet that we got. So that's just a little bit of information for you. So it's more expensive to buy a niche in Sunbury than it is to buy a plot.
Mhm.
And then the open and close pricing. So if it's cremation burial versus a traditional burial, and if it's a weekday versus a weekend, it can be adjusted a little bit. I'd say the long and short of it is we're probably on the lower end in most instances
In that section.
in
there.
this section in terms of our pricing. Now I think Mr. Martin, you said an analysis was done, a few years ago, and maybe the conclusion was that's the cost of roughly the cost of burying a person. And so maybe we wanted to stay in line with that. So again, I'm not suggesting that we adjust our price, just want to let you know, that's where we are at the moment. There are a couple of other, notes that are on here as well. They do have some of these other cemeteries, they do have a reduced price for an infant grave. I know I've gotten that question a few times because it's not quite as significant a dig.
Mhm.
A couple of them do not allow burials on Sunday. Our policy allows it on Sunday, so that may be something we want to think a little bit about. So
I like the idea of a reduced fee for the infants.
for an infant, yeah, maybe that's
Personal opinion, and I do see where in that section, we are a little bit low, maybe by $100 or so from where Berkshire is and Berlin Township.
Yeah. So again, think a little bit about the pricing, not necessarily asking for any action, but just I think, again, we wanted to take a little bit of a snapshot, just see if we were way out of line. And I'm not, at least it doesn't jump out to me that it feels like we're out of line.
Could you bring this back to our next meeting?
Yeah, I can do that.
Maybe we can reach some final
Can you
conclusions.
put it in a little bigger font?
I had to take my glasses off.
Next meeting, bigger font.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Hennessy. Any new business? We have about,
And then there's one other item, just want to quickly, the events. So at the
Oh, yes.
council meeting later today or later this evening, that you're going to be asked to review the special event permit policy. In there, it references a decision-making matrix. And so that's what I've given you here. And again, it might be a little too small, and I'll try to get this a little bit bigger to the group. What I wanted to do is just show you that I think most of the events were coming to the Parks Board in the past for some review and consideration. You'll see that with the events committee in place, that we don't have as many approvals coming to the Parks Board.
yes.
When it does come to the Parks Board, it involves a park. And it generally involves the use of the park for most of the day. So you're tying it up for some purpose. You cannot restrict the use of other people accessing the park, but you're committing to kind of using the park for some specific purpose. So that's where you'll mostly see things coming to the committee.
Mhm.
And the other place you'd see them is if somebody came and was proposing a commemoration of some sort that occurs in a park. That no matter, the size, whatever, those will always come to you because it's affecting the park and it's a permanent improvement.
One of the things in the past we've tried to avoid is having people, especially with the square, use it for an exclusive event.
Yes,
In other words, we don't mind events being on the square, but we want to be inclusive, not exclusive.
yeah, and that's one of the things that, we said that any event that occurs on a park that's going to last more than 6 hours and have more than 25 people probably needs to go through a process because it is starting to limit the use of the park. for
Right.
other folks.
Yeah.
And again, you may still decide that it's what you want to do, but those are the ones that'll work their way through the events committee and to the parks committee before a final decision is made. So
We have further discussion this evening and
yeah, a little bit, but I just want to make sure you are aware that's kind of how it would impact the parks board.
did you need any guidance from this?
No.
Okay. All right, very good. I do not have any other new or old or unfinished business. Anyone?
I was just gonna ask one question. Daryl, I don't know if you're the best person for this, but I know it's only February 1st, but we're not gonna be that far away from Memorial Day.
Mhm.
And I know we have
Yeah.
talked back and forth about
Yeah.
how to handle the service there. So I didn't know if we were buttoning that up and getting that all, ready to go or not.
I'm glad you raised that.
And would that be for the special, run through the special events committee? or
It
would that
will.
Okay.
Well, that event, that's an event. That event doesn't last more than 6 hours.
Yeah.
It's got more than 25 people, but it's only using this park for a short period of time. So that one doesn't trigger, an event permit process. But because it's connected to what's happening on the square, we'll obviously be thinking about it in the context of that. But John, your question really more is just, are we going to make sure that we provide adequate seating
Yeah.
for them? We talked a little bit about it. I've met with the VHW or the VFW folks and the American Legion folks. And had confirmed with Dave that it's a sizable crowd
Mhm.
that's coming there and seating is going to be necessary. So we do have to find a seating alternative.
Yeah.
And I think we had committed that we would do that for them.
Yeah.
They didn't like the idea of coming up to the square for the event,
Right.
mostly for parking, that they really felt like for the age of those who are participating, it's
Mhm.
easier to park and access the event from that park than it is to try to park somewhere here in the city or somewhere up near the square and then walk. Plus, they'd be tying up a lot of parking that's needed for the flea market. So that was one. And then the other thing is they thought seating on the grass area would be more complicated again for the age of those participating. They like the fact that it's on a paved surface and that works really well for them. So
Right.
I think we've agreed that it doesn't make sense to move the event. Now we just have to accommodate them
Right.
at that location. So that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? To my right?
Nope.
I will motion for adjournment.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grumney. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gifts,
Yes,
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
3 ayes, we are adjourned.
thank you.
For the record, not one of us said aye, we all said yes. When
All right,
when you make those
You
notes.
make a good point.